Welcome to Stepping on the Mat podcast, episode 014 with me, Aaron Martinez. My guest today is a native of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He was a two-time state high school champion, a three-time junior freestyle All-American, and a junior freestyle national champion. He went on to have success in collegiate career at Iowa State University from 94 to 98. He was a four-time All-American for the Cyclones, finishing third as a freshman, second as a sophomore, and fourth as a junior, and third as a senior. He ranks fourth on Iowa State's all-time career wins list. He was a USA senior level All-American and a two-time World Team qualifier. He is currently and has served as Iowa State police officer for the past 2 decades, while also working with Central Iowa Wrestling Club and Team Intensity for 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Dwight Hinson.
Hey.
Welcome to the show, Dwight.
Thanks for having me, brother. Thanks.
I'm so glad you made it in from Ames. Thanks for coming all the way down to see me.
Yes, sir.
And welcome to the show. Before we get going, I have a gift for you, though.
Oh.
Here you go. Hand it on over to you.
I love gifts, man.
Yeah. Just a little friendly gift from I Wrestle. There you go. And myself.
Stickers. Everybody
Boom, boom.
This is awesome.
I got you an extra small T-shirt so you can flex on everybody.
Yeah. I need to get rid of the belly, but yeah, we're good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for coming in. I know Ames is a little bit of a drive from Ames and Norwalk, but we got you going. I'll take that for you.
No problem.
So, got you here now. I've been waiting for this opportunity to talk to you. Your name has been brought up on the podcast a couple times, so it's just a blessing that you're present and you're here today. So, I want to pick your brain. So, tell me what's just kind of been going on the last couple months for you.
So the last couple months, so I'm a former officer. I work for the Office of Equal Opportunity at Iowa State University. So I've gotten away from the police work, but I now do discrimination, harassment, and also Title IX type issues at ISU. So it's a whole different office. I work Monday through Fridays, have my weekends and holidays off, and just kind of getting that family time back, But other than that, still doing the same thing, man. Continuing pushing the envelope for wrestling here in Iowa, and it's never been a problem. But I'm just a vessel for the sport. I like doing what I'm doing. I'm the head coach at Central Iowa Wrestling Club, Team Intensity, and we continue to practice. Anybody that wants to come through the door, who's willing to put in work and learn from somebody who's been there,
Yeah. And with that club team, do you find that is there like times during the season where there's like breaks where you like kind of lose kids off?
Yeah. So you get a lot of kids that do the multiple sports, and I have I don't disagree with it at all. I think kids should play multiple sports, but who's going to stay and actually get the most out of it. And those who want to be sports specific, they'll put in the work they need to put in. And I expect those individuals to come through the door every time.
Yeah.
But it does taper off a little bit, especially towards late spring, especially when freestyle starts. That's when you start getting those who really want to do it. Mm-hmm. They'll stay in the gyms.
Yeah.
They'll compete. And then you got those doing like baseball or something like that. But it's very rare. I mean, every now and then you'll find somebody who's that multiple sport person, and they can do either sport they want to do, but it's pretty rare.
Right.
And in this sport, you definitely have to kind of keep up because it's perishable.
Yeah, it is.
It's perishable, man. So
yeah, we were talking about my son. He had seen him around in one of the youth sports, and then he took a couple of years off, so he's got to play catch up a little bit. So
yes.
Yeah. How's your son doing? We kind of talked about him offset a little bit.
Jabari's my son. He wrestles for Ames High. He's definitely been around my program since he was a little kid. It's not anything I really pushed on him, but it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to the barn, the facility where we train at. And it was almost like babysitting for him,
Right.
Or babysitting for me, because he's able to, just play around as a kid, get the feel of, what it is to wrestle and plus have fun. But he's doing well, man. He's doing well. He got second last year at state to a tough opponent. But, he's ready to get back in there and get at it. He had a small injury, small setback during the summer where he tore something in his shoulder. He got surgery, which kept him from competing at Fargo this year. But hey, he's getting stronger, and he's to the point where we don't know what weight he's going to go at. Honestly, I can tell you that. But he's a growing kid. He's sprouting a little bit, so we're just getting him ready for competition. But the main thing is getting him healthy.
Yeah, yeah. And in sports medicine has came up a lot. Yeah. In the past, PT is so much better for athletes now because they really know that the kids have a desire to go beyond their physical limits sometimes. So they see them through that pretty well.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about one topic here is, you were a military brat. I don't know why they use that word, military brat. You probably wasn't a brat, but
right.
Being in a military family, maybe you share with me a little bit about that experience as a kid and having your dad being in the military.
It was a blessing. It was a blessing because, one, you got to travel. Mm-hmm. You got to travel. And there was certain places, of course, that we couldn't go. My father was in there for 23, almost 25 years. And he enjoyed it, but there were times when I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. And of course, when Dad leaves, he's always telling you, "Hey, you got to be the man of the house now."
Right.
So you took that. You took that. And so I tried my best doing that. Of course, I was a kid, didn't really know what that meant. But, through the time, through the years, you understood. You understood, and you just had to proceed and live your life and get the job done. Keep your grades up. Do the best you can. Don't try to stress your mom. Don't be that kid,
Yeah.
But be a role model and a leader for your brothers and sisters, but I loved it, man, because you get to travel and you got to see life.
Now, he was in the Army or?
Yeah, he was in the Army. So he was a E8.
Okay.
But he was a heavy artillery instructor. And, those who work around those big howitzers and cannons, they don't have a lot of hearing, man.
Yeah.
So
What'd you say?
Yeah. What? And that's how he was, But he was definitely an individual not to mess around with because he was very strict. It was a strict household, and we didn't have time for errors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Those guys that work on the howitzers, they're great field operators. They have great observation, and they're very dependable people.
Yeah.
Usually because it kind of goes with the trade of like when you're calling for fire.
Correct.
You have to make accurate coordinates to make the fires. Mm-hmm. Right. And you count on those guys to really put those fire missions in. So that's awesome. Where was your dad all stationed when you were present? Oh
man, we were throughout the U.S. I would say most of the time was spent over in the East Coast. So it would have been, the last place we resided was Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That's where I kind of grew up. But before then, it would have been New York, New Jersey, Fort Dix, New Jersey, Virginia. I think my father did some time at like AP Hill, if you're familiar with that. And there were some other places, but those, just to name a few.
Now, seeing your dad in that, I mean, obviously in E8, he's like in like a first sergeant position, something like that, or sergeant major's position, and those guys are pretty rigid, How did you see yourself maybe going into the military?
You know what? I kind of came to that crossroad because if I thought I wasn't going to go far with the wrestling, I for sure was thinking about Marines.
Right.
Marines. Just sharp dress.
Yeah.
No nonsense type. And also, I guess my skill set being a wrestler would assist with that type of training.
Right. Warfighter.
There's some similarities within that training. But I thought about it, and of course, in high school, you're getting recruited, and one of them happened to be the Naval Academy was kind of looking at me, Air Force Academy, as well as West Point. So I really thought about it hard. But of course, talks with the coaches, hey, you want to go to some caliber places. Not saying that they're not caliber. At the same time, you want to go, where they got more of a foundation in wrestling. So
Yeah. And you mentioned that your brother is in the military, down at Fort Bliss, where I was stationed at.
Man,
that's cool.
He's loving it, man. Like I said, he's having a great time. He's been He just retired last year, so it was like 22 years. Almost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations to your brother if he's
man.
listening.
Oh, yeah. Eric Richard Hinson, he's an Eagles fan. I'm not going to hold that against him.
Yeah, El Paso's a great place. And Fort Bliss is really blowing up. I remember when the place was just a sandbox. And that was such a hard place to deploy out of, too, because like you're like basically in the desert and then you deploy and go to the desert. So you never really feel like you're home.
Yes.
But that's great that your brother has made those commitments, especially, you know, today's September 12th, you know, in honor of September 11th yesterday. Man, that was such an impactful time in our culture and in our country.
Yeah.
You know, so hats off to all those folks that are, you know. And
just a little something to add to that.
Sure.
Is that, you know, we never thought he would go into the Army. He was, I don't want to call him the black sheep, but he was definitely, he got in trouble a lot, you know, especially with Dad. And I was like, yeah, he's not going into the
go
military.
to war, go to jail. That's what they say, right?
But here's the thing, though. After college, he became a teacher, which we're surprised on that. But surely after 9/11, he said, you know what? I'm going to commit myself to the Army.
Yeah.
And he went. You know, right before we got married, you know, me and my wife got married, he went in. And during that time, I was like, well, looks like you're not going to be around for my wedding, because he did get deployed. So, but yeah, he also did 5 deployments as well. So, you know, he loved what he did, had a great time. Of course, he did lose some friends. Yeah. In that whole process, you know, going back and forth to war. But, you know, he's loving life now. Yeah, that's you know, I was pretty impacted by those trials myself. Lost a lot of friends. You know, since September 11th, our country and a lot of our country warfighters have been affected by that. So I'm glad your brother is in a better place now and moving on with his life, and I'd like to honor that today. So and we appreciate you, man. Appreciate all those who have worn the uniform, who have given their all. I mean, it's a huge sacrifice. Yeah, big time.
So I'm glad he's home and he's doing well, and he's retired and feeling happy about life and
doing well, man. You know, he's taking care of his wife, and he's got a small. Well, my niece, what is her? She's about maybe 9, 10 right now, maybe close to 10. But she's in gymnastics, so he takes her back and forth to school, takes her to practice, and he's there. I mean, he's being dad. Yeah. Amongst, you know, other stuff like enjoying hobbies and stuff like that. So
yeah. I know that you you don't have a deep family history of wrestling, but like I can remember when I was a kid, you know, my dad was a wrestler. He was pretty successful as a wrestler, amongst my uncles as well. But one thing that really got me going about wrestling was WWF. You know, did you watch WWF when you were a kid?
Brother, huge fan. Huge fan.
Well, let's go. Let's talk about it.
I'll tell you what, man, huge fan. So, you know, we talked about my father being in the military. So there was one particular time where we couldn't travel with him. And I can't remember if he went back to Germany, because he went back twice. And that's another place where
was he at in Germany?
Schaffenburg.
Schaffenburg? I was in Vilseck.
Yes. And, you know, we can go on and on. I do remember the sights about being in Schaffenburg. It was amazing. Yeah. I mean, you got the castles out there. Just the scenery was...
It's another world.
Awesome.
Another time dimension.
Awesome. So, going back to the story here. My father was stationed over in Korea. We couldn't go to Korea with him. Yeah. Right? So we ended up staying with my grandparents, who were living in small town Virginia. And I'm talking about like segregated.
Yeah.
You got the black side, you got the white side, but there's still that flow.
Still that line in the tracks.
That line of tracks between the blacks and the white, because they had a black pool and then they had a white pool. And I'm like, you know, coming from the military, and you asked about being from the military, it's like, dude, we hung with everybody.
Yeah, we're Skittles over there.
You know what I mean? But it was like, it was a different world, you know. And my mother always told us, hey, just mind your P's and Q's, you know, because stuff is still the same around here. Yeah. You know? But anyway, my grandfather, Richard Bartley, my mother's father, was a big big time watcher of professional wrestling, and I'm talking about like NWA. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm talking
I do.
about
The
like,
Road Warriors.
The Road Warriors, Dusty Rhodes, and you know there was NWA, and then there was like the WWC or WCW.
WWF too.
WWF.
Yeah.
The original WWF. And every night, I think it was like a Friday night or something like that, or maybe Saturday night, it would be either WCW or WWF, and we'd take turns watching that. And, you know, he was a hard worker. You know, he was a bricklayer, farmer on the side. But, man, he'd come home and take off those boots, and he's like, hey, Dwight, let's watch this. I got to watch my boy Dusty Rhodes. You know, man, we were all about it, man. But I was so in love with the Road Warriors, man.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Just the paint and the spikes.
Yeah, because they were in WWE first before they came over to WWF. And when they came over, it was like,
oh, yeah.
It got turned up.
Turned up, man.
They had the shoulder pads, the spikes.
That's right. That's right.
What was their name? Hawk and Animal,
Hawk
right?
and Animal.
Hawk and Animal.
And then they had like Nemesis where it wasn't Demolition, because Demolition was later on, but it was who are their nemesis?
Well, I know when they were in the WWF.
Warlord and
Barbarian? Yeah, the Barbarian,
yeah. Those boys are big too, and they went at it, man. I could recall a time where they had like a weightlifting competition.
Right.
You know, and all along I'm thinking, yeah, this is kind of fake, but they had this weightlifting competition between the two.
Yeah.
Between the Road Warriors and also
Hawk and Animal.
But also against the Warlord and Barbarian. And somebody picked up a big plate and like dropped it on one of their heads, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So you get into it, and you also think about like Devon Eriks, and it was kind of before that time, but Devon Eriks was huge, man. Are you going to see the new movie that's coming out?
Yeah, of course.
That's going to be huge.
Man. Yeah, it's going to be huge.
So it's a lot of history there, but a lot of nostalgia for me, because like I said, it's going to go back to the time where I used to watch it with my grandfather all the time.
Yeah.
Even before I even knew about like amateur wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, what we do here, so.
And like that culture is like alive and present today, you know.
Yes.
Like I said, some of the we're talking about awards and stuff,
Exactly.
like it's all vintage now, right?
Yes,
so all that stuff's coming back. The kids are loving it up. So
Yep.
I remember watching the first time I seen a live WWF at Vets Auditorium when I was a kid. Hulk Hogan came out, you know, the Real American. I think that had a lot to do with a lot of influences about what I was going to do with my life too, you know, the patriotic feeling, being a patriot. So
Yes.
yeah, good times. Who was your favorite wrestler?
Oh, let's see here, man. I had a couple. I want to say Coco Beware, you know, and that would be WWF. Junkyard Dog, of course. Of course, the Road Warriors. Dusty Rhodes, man, just because he had that mouthpiece.
Yeah.
You know, of course, Ric Flair, he had the mouthpiece as well. You know, just the way he carried himself was another level. And now it's coming back, so people are trying to emulate him to this day.
Yeah.
And he had a different lifestyle.
Well, people emulate him and just outside of wrestling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, with the football and his sayings, and they were classic, you know, and that always cracked my grandfather up, man. He was like, man, how does he come up with all this, you know? But it's how they lived, you know. I like watching the documentaries about those guys because some of those guys lived hard lives. Man.
Yeah. Well, it was fake, but the injuries were real. The injuries are super real.
And I could tell you one story. When I first got started, we moved from Virginia to Oklahoma when I was in the 8th grade. It was towards the end of the football season. When I got to Oklahoma, Oklahoma's big in football, of course. And the coaches were like, hey, you know, I was a running back in Virginia. I was doing pretty well. And I said, hey, can I join the team? He said, yeah. But, you know, he gave me the playbook. And I'm like, dude, this is a lot, you know. So, of course, I didn't go out that year because it was a little bit too late. So I made a couple friends, and they were like, hey, man, you know, we got wrestling coming up after football. I said, what? I said, really? He said, yeah, this ain't the fake stuff, though. I said, man, I'll try it out. But, you know, I thought about going out for basketball. And my buddy, Edwin Lauren, who happened to be a national champion later on in life at Central Oklahoma College. He's like, nah, man, try this out. You know, if you're that athlete, try this out. But it was, you know, I learned a lot from it. But sorry, going back to the 8th grade. So 8th grade comes around, we're training, and Lawton High is just up the street from Central Junior High, where I went to school and where I started my
Your wrestling
career. So after our practice, we would go practice with the high school kids, right? And that would have been led by Joe Zuspan, who was man. People know Joe Zuspan because he's from Fort Dodge, Iowa. National round coach. He'll be in the Hall of Fame here shortly in Oklahoma. But he built that team up so much. There was a lot of athletes during that time that came out of Lawton. And Lawton High School was probably the flagship for anything successful coming out of Lawton. Robbie Haddon, James Downey, Rico Jordan, Butler. The names go on and on. But these are people that I looked up to. So, like I said, after our practice, we would go up there and practice with them. And during the time, and I can't remember what was going on, but I think there was like a benefit at the high school. And they brought in some of these WCW wrestlers.
Oh, wow.
And one of them was Dr. Death, Steve Williams, who has a connection back to Oklahoma because he played at Oklahoma University.
I didn't know that.
As a football player. Yeah, he was on the line. So Dr. Death, but also was Kerry Von Erich.
Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah. And I'll never forget him coming through. So he came in the middle of practice. I was like, yo,
who's this monster?
I was like, whoa, what is this? And everybody knew who he was, right? But it was just wild. But going back to those guys, they lived a hard life. Because when they came in, they rolled around with us, and I was like, you guys smell like liquor.
Smell like the booze.
Oh, they smell like booze, man. They
bottle.
partied hard and they worked hard.
Yeah.
So, you got a sense of that, what was going on. It's a hard life when you got to entertain, and, demons come into mind. But, I didn't lose any respect for him because I knew him as those people on TV.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was awesome that they even took the time to come see us in between their show. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. Yeah.
So that's how you got love for it and found some early role models, even though they were actors, like
they're tough, man.
Tough though.
Tough characters, man.
So you got you started wrestling at what age then?
So it would have been the 8th grade is when I got introduced.
And then, so 8th grade year, moving into your high school, had some awesome success in high school as a wrestler. So maybe share a little bit about your high school experience.
So junior high experience, especially in Oklahoma, it's changed a little bit because now high school is considered freshman on up. Mm-hmm. Back then it was just 10th grade on up.
Okay.
So going into and first learning it in 8th grade, I was already an athlete, and I worked around and trained with some of the best athletes in Oklahoma during that time who happened to be at our school. And these guys, and we had like a gymnastics program at this particular junior high. And a lot of my friends went to that, and they were athletes, man. I mean, they're doing backflips and practice. And I'm like, man, these boys are bad.
That's how the Russians train.
Oh, that's how they train, right? Because you got to have a sense of your body. You got to know how to fall. You got to know how to roll and recover. Mm-hmm. So that was part of our warm up. And that's where I learned to do my backflips off these guys. So the new friends came in, everybody's wrestling, you're doing it. And during that time, 8th and 9th grade, we would battle a team from the Oklahoma City area, which would be Midwest City. And back then, Midwest City was like nationally ranked. It's like, you can contribute. It's parallel to like Southeast Polk and maybe like some of the other schools.
Waverly Shell
Rock.
Yeah.
And there was some bad boys. But we were always chasing them.
Right.
We always wanted to chase them, and we had our opportunity.
You always run faster when you're nipping on somebody's heel.
You got to. You got to gauge yourself.
That's right.
Right. And we never strayed away from competition. And then, we never took a no. And Coach Ellis Holt, Hall of Fame wrestling coach out of Oklahoma, he brought me into the sport, trained me, and he was my high school coach. Because he did some time at the junior high, and then we moved off of base and moved to the west side of town. Now, I didn't follow those guys that I came up with because they went straight to Lawton High, and I went to Lawton Eisenhower, which is off to the west side. And that was a decision that had to be made. I mean, I could have followed those guys to Lawton High with that group of guys who later on became national champions with that team.
Yeah.
But also they were state champions as a team. They were some bad boys.
Yeah.
The only person missing in that lineup was me, right? But of course, we did some things off to the west side with Eisenhower. We had a great program. But Lawton High was that team during that era, during the time I was coming up. So 8th, 9th grade, I placed second. I placed second, 8th and 9th grade in Oklahoma. And that's, that was pretty good for being your second year.
Yeah.
Second years. But it was mostly because of athletic ability. I was a little bit stronger, a little bit quicker. And there was a couple of moves that I learned from like WCW or what's his name?
You didn't hit nobody with the power driver, did you?
Hey, I hit him with the small package though. You remember the small package?
I do.
One of the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Danny Boy Smith.
British Bulldogs.
British Bulldogs,
man. Come on,
right?
Man. Those were two of my favorite tag teams.
Somebody
man.
would get on my leg and hit him with the cradle from the feet.
Those dudes weren't from Britain, were they?
Oh man, no, they weren't. Maybe Canada or something like that. But anyway, I went on to play second as a 9th grader. We won it as a team. And then I get into my sophomore year where I'm at Lawton Eisenhower. I placed in the top 6 during my sophomore year. And that was a time where I don't know.
Now, did you weight jump from your freshman to sophomore year?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember what the weight class was back then. I was like, that back then they had like 90 pounds or something.
Yeah.
I think I started out at 95, went up to 108. And by my sophomore year, it would have been like 120, 121. Somewhere around there. That was the weight class.
That was your jump.
Yes.
That was your big jump.
And so my senior year, I was undefeated. So I was a 2-time state champ and OW as well. But man, I learned a lot from my core group of guys who I came up with at Central Junior High under Coach Holt. And we're friends till this day. Because, we made history.
Yeah.
We made history with those group of guys. And it was Lawton, is a military town.
I was going to ask you that. I mean, to cut you off. I was going to ask you that because, being in the military myself, like the schools, the kids went on post, and they didn't really have the strong. I know I coached a high school wrestling team when I was in the military, and I was like, where is the talent?
Right. But you get some gritty kids, man.
Yeah.
You get some gritty kids, and Lawton happened to be that city. They call it Little Chicago because it's like it was a melting pot.
Yeah.
Blacks, Hispanics, Asians. You had everybody, man. And it was just a melting pot. But on our particular team, majority of brothers of blacks, but also we had Hispanics, Asians, and we had one white dude, Blake Hooper. Calling out Blake Hooper.
Blake finally felt what it'd be like to be a minority.
Hey man, he was one of us.
One of us.
He was one of us, but his dad was the mayor for the town. But we didn't treat him.
He didn't wear that. He didn't wear that chevron on his shoulder.
He was a brawler like us, man.
Yeah.
He was a brawler like us, man. And I always talked about. Everybody asked me, what's the difference between you and your son? I said, well, I grew up differently. I'm around some tough kids, and it's like you had to be that dude. You had to know who you were. It's like you got to fight for your girlfriend every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I tell my jiu-jitsu students that all the time. I got to fight. I got to fight it every day. I got to defend this title every day.
You got to fight all the time, and you got it's sad to say, but you always had somebody from your team stealing from you, so it's like constant fights in the locker room.
Yeah.
Just a lot of jaw jacking too, and bravado, man, and that's how it was. And you definitely had
that team
to show.
Spirit.
Yeah. But you get the most out of practice. It made for the most exciting practices because, like you said, steel sharpens steel. But man, there was a lot of serious stuff going on behind that, and Coach had to break up a couple of fights.
Yeah, I think I had some really intense battles in practice.
Oh man,
Todd Buckland was one of my.
Oh yeah,
he was my main training partner in high school.
Big ups to Todd Buckland.
Big up to Todd Buckland. 2-time state champion out of Lincoln.
Right on.
Man, we and Todd were great friends. And yeah, we had wars. Yeah. I mean, we had wars in the practice room. I think I had harder matches in the practice room, or more collected inside of those moments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Hornets' nest, man. I mean, that's where the greats come out of, man. That's where the greats come out of, and like I said, till this day, I talk to a lot of those guys. We run into each other either at some of these USA tournaments or, mostly USA. They don't have a lot of AAU and outside of Iowa. Of course, AAU's big in Iowa, but outside it's more USA and some of these other other programs are coming up, or other federations are coming up. They're a little bit different than AAU, but I run into these guys all the time, especially at like Tulsa Nationals, because I've tried to keep our guys, if they're interested. I don't force it on them, but during the early times, I was like, hey, you need to get down to Oklahoma and wrestle those guys, And I used to take my son down there all the time just because we kind of made it a dual trip where go down, see family, and we get some wrestling in.
Yeah. I had Mickey Griffith on the show, and he was talking about the first couple times he went down to the Tulsa Nationals, and he was like, "I just got to win one match.
Yeah,
I got to get, if I can get that one match, I know I can.
Yeah,
get
man.
Further,
and it's like, and wrestling in my family started with me. My other brothers wrestled as well, and I got two nephews that wrestle. One is at Iowa Central now. Caden Hawkins Hinson, if you listen, big ups to you. So he's starting his first year out at Iowa Central. Hopefully he can get that starting position, but he's going to make the most of it, during his 2 years there, and probably move on to somewhere else. But and of course you got, my son Jabari Hinson, and then another nephew, also named Caden Wallace, and he's out of Lawton Mac. So in that town that I'm from, there's 3 high schools. There's Lawton Mac, there's Lawton High, and there's Lawton Eisenhower, which we call Ike. So yeah.
So speaking of that, you're talking about some of those bigger tournaments. So you walked away with 2 state titles, but you went on to go wrestle at nationals, right? Maybe share that experience.
So, as you know, just learning that whole freestyle Greco, it's a grind. It's definitely a great introduction to what's bigger and the different levels of wrestling. I loved Greco. Man, I love Greco. My first experience was when I qualified, and it was really, I ended up getting 4th because it was only the top 3 to make it. But something happened, and I ended up being a reserve, right? So anyway, it's a learning process, and I didn't get it at first, but I loved it. So I ended up getting 4th in a state Greco tournament in 8th grade or 9th grade. And then somebody got hurt who was in front of me, who was like a 3rd place guy. And so I was in. And my first tournament was in like Kalamazoo, Michigan. And this is when a guy by the name of Danny Felix, he was like the big name coming out of like Arizona. And I'm not sure if Jeff McGinnis brought up his name, but Jeff wrestled him for a national title, either cadets or juniors, and they wrestled each other. But my senior year, I went on to beat Danny Felix, who beat McGinnis for the junior national title. But my introduction was wrestling Greco, and I saw this guy named Danny Felix, and I was like, man, he's the dude. He's like the poster child of Greco. I went on to wrestle him, and I lost to him like 7-1 or something like that. But I was raw. You know what I mean? I didn't know anything about the sport, but because I got beat, I wanted to learn more about it. Because I'm like, dude, this is like my first time coming, and I ended up placing. And I think I might have got 6th or 7th that year. And then I proceeded to just get better at it. Get better at Greco. So we went to a lot of tournaments. Our coach was a nut. He had this small van, Econoline van with shag carpet, some TVs in there.
Sweet.
And he used to
mystery vehicle.
Man, he would take 20 of us, pack us in there and say, hey, we're going down the highway to a tournament. Tell your mom, give you some money. This is where we're going. And we would go across state as well. Of course, we get permission, of course, from the parents. But we'll go to like, just kind of like the surrounding states. We'll go to like Kansas, Missouri, down to Texas, where they had just a little bit of wrestling. But man, it was fun. It was fun, and we liked doing it, and we got different seasoning out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we got tired of wrestling the same kids over and over. And coach is like, yeah, we need to, get out the bubble a little bit, go and get some of this other competition. But I proceeded with the freestyle in Greco, and then the next year, I became a national champion in Greco. And this happened like Warrensburg, Missouri, somewhere where it was just hot, damn hot. I can remember that. But and I ended up beating Troy Sabat, who was a former national champion. So as I progressed, I ended up beating some national champions on the way up. I was a late bloomer, but I got better and better as time went on. So that would have been cadets. I placed in freestyle like third or something like that. But, I was to the point where like after I won it, I was like, man, we got to weigh in again. And it's a grind if you go both styles. Kudos and salute to you guys that go both styles because it's hard.
Yeah.
Especially making weight every day. It's no joke. But as I got closer to high school, I made a choice. I'm like, man, I'm going to stick to one or the other. I'm not going to do both because it's just a hard cut. So I ended up placing. I still placed at a couple of tournaments in both styles. But towards my senior year, and this is when they first had Fargo, when Fargo became the home of junior nationals, is when I won it.
First time there, set it off.
Yep, set it off. And like I said, I had to wrestle Danny Felix, who's a returning national champion. He beat McGinnis the year before. And then I turned around and beat Felix for that national title at the first Fargo.
That's amazing.
It was awesome,
History.
man. It was awesome. It's all I can remember is going back and forth from the dorm to the venue because it was just building up. They had just built that venue.
Right.
And it was huge. A lot of what I can recall is a lot of the buildings around weren't even there. Like some of the other dorms that they have around.
Sure.
The dome wasn't even there. It was a new development. But also the floods put a damper on it.
That would have been what year?
It would have been like
93.
93.
Yeah, the floods in 93.
It was bad. I mean, it was still kind of saturated and then muddy, and I'm like, man, why are we here? It was like it wasn't a very attractive place.
Yeah.
To have a national tournament. And I could just recall fighting through mosquitoes, and it was just muggy and hot and just damn terrible. But I was on a mission, so it was like just go back and forth, sleep. I was kind of antisocial then. I was like, I'm on a mission, man. All I'm concerned about is making weight, eating, recovering, wrestle, do it all over again.
Yeah. And what was your process back then like?
I didn't. When I look back at it, especially my time when I'm watching my son go through this process, these guys are having fun. It's one of the great times of your life, honestly, because it's an honor to even go to Fargo. For me, it was more like a mission because I was like, man, I worked too hard to be playing around. Of course, during that time, you got a little camaraderie going on with your teammates and everybody's going back and forth to each other's room. I wasn't like that at all, man. I was like, hey, you guys are going to get away. You're going to get me off of schedule. Yeah. You're going to get me off my plan. And I was always dialed in.
Yeah.
And after a while, I thought maybe that's, man, do I have something wrong with me? But
it could have been some of your dad rubbing off on you.
That,
the military is
right.
Is mission focused.
Do your job.
That's it.
Do your job, man. And I was focused on that. And plus, I think it was like the weight cut too. Like when you start losing weight, man, you're not very sociable around people. My mother said, she was like, dude, you mean when you start cutting weight. So I just
when you're hungry.
Yeah, I stay away from
to chew somebody's arm off.
I know it, man. So it's like you visit that dark place and it's like you make weight, you come back, you rest. And that was my plan, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there to burn any extra energy playing around or getting into whatever those guys got into.
Right. Right.
Hey, I had a plan and I stuck to it,
Now, one thing about wrestling, it's a one-on-one sport, mano a mano.
Yes, sir.
And, there's something special about that, like team sports is great. You learn like some of the stuff in the military, right? You learn these like team cohesion, cohesiveness, camaraderie. You get all these components that work well in a team, but then you have this one-on-one thing where it's just you. Mm-hmm. Yes, you train with your team. Yes, you got a coach, but it's just you out there.
Right.
Did you thrive in that? And how did you stay present with that kind of focus, doing these big national tournaments? And
it's always the company you keep. Like I said, iron sharpens iron. Even coming up, like I said, it started with the Central Junior High crew. These guys wanted to do something big, and you wanted to do the same. Coming up with those guys, just learning how to drill, how to carry yourself, and how to prioritize your training. Coach Holt was a big part of that, but also I give it up to my big brothers, Greco, Jordan, Had, and Butler. A lot of those guys went on to be like junior national champions and wrestle in D1. Some of them went to JUCO colleges and accomplished big things. But man, those guys set the bar for us. We were around some older kids, and it's like, I want to be like that person. And like I said, and it all goes back to my father. My father played sports in college. He was the first African American to graduate from. He ended up going to Abilene Christian, where he played football. He was a linebacker. Before that, he was at Blaine College, a small community college in Texas that's known for football. Anything I needed as far as like weights or anything like that, he didn't know nothing about wrestling, but he's like, hey, I know it's a contact sport, and this is the mentality you have to have. You don't want to short yourself on any type of sport. If you're going to do it.
Right.
He would always say, get your helmet out your duffel bag and be ready.
Makes sense to me.
And he was serious about it.
You got to be ready when it's wrestling.
Like I said, the man didn't know anything about the sport of wrestling, but he's the one that kind of put that drive into me. Yeah, this is what you got to do. Sometimes you got to wake up early. You're going to have to run. You got to lift some weights. So there were times when I actually, me and my father actually went for a run. We lifted weights and all that. And he was a big part of that,
Yeah.
But definitely with Coach Holt, he showed me a lot because he wrestled a little bit in JUCO, and then he wrestled at Boise State. So he had that D1, background, as well as some other coaches I had been around during my years. And I was blessed to be around a lot of coaches. But man, just being around kids who want to work hard, I couldn't lose.
Right.
I couldn't lose. I had a partner by the name of Quincy Wilson, and the dude was an athlete. I mean, we talked about multi-sport athletes. He was one of them. I mean, he was like a 145 pounder, probably about the same height as me, about 5'5", 5'6", and can dunk.
Wow.
The dude has some
Spud Webb.
He was bad. Yeah, he was bad. And so we both became state champions at the same time.
That's awesome.
He was at I was at 123. He was at 40-something, 145. So we were battling constantly. And we didn't have, it wasn't a big room. It was just, we were relying on each other. We pushed each other. Yeah. Another individual would have been Mike Brown. And that was big for us. We needed each other. We didn't have to have a big room. If you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking, do we need to run hills? Yeah, we need to run hills. Let's do it. We need to run steps. Let's go run steps. We need to go on post and use the sauna. Let's go on post and use the sauna.
Yeah.
Let's get a workout in. We were kind of big into Rocky back then.
Yeah, of course.
And that's the ultimate grind, ultimate grind sports footage.
Yeah.
You respect that. I love watching boxing clips and all that, what they go through, because there's some similarities, especially with the weight cutting, how they train up to the fight, and they have to be dialed in and get into that.
You have to have a good IQ.
IQ, yes.
Yeah. I love boxing.
I love it, man. I tell you, before UFC came along, I was all into, I would always record.
Oh, I got the pay-per-views at my house all the time. I got every Tyson fight.
Oh, we did too.
Every one of them. Come on, Dwight. Come on, Dwight.
Hey, I would record the HBO series of those fighters.
Yeah.
In their training camps.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. I was like, oh, man, that's a great idea. Because, it's a gladiator sport.
Yeah.
Contact sport. They're doing the same thing we're doing.
Who was your favorite boxer back in the day?
Oh, man. It's tough. I would say there was a couple individuals. Cesar Chavez,
Yep.
Sweet Pea Whitaker.
Sweet Pea Whitaker. He had the ill.
Yeah.
He had the guard that nobody can get behind.
Holyfield. He was a
Holyfield.
machine. But one of them was, oh man, he's got a Vida Loca.
Camacho. You talking about Hector Camacho?
Nope.
You already mentioned Chavez.
Oh man, he was.
But do you remember when Chavez won that
Yeah.
won that last in the 12th round? Who was he fight against?
Oh man.
Melter Taylor, I think.
Yes.
I was freaking out because I was a huge Chavez fan. Obviously, being a Mexican, I was like, that was my man.
Man, I tell you what, it was a brawl, and I think he was down.
Yeah, he was. He was losing the fight.
He had to knock him out.
Yeah, he was undefeated. He was losing the fight.
And anytime he got to the body, pop, pop,
Bang,
pop.
bang. That's where the body's at, man.
Yeah,
you hit the
man.
body, they slow down.
Oh man, and I'm trying, man.
Same with the gut wrench and wrestling.
Yeah,
man. You
so-
got a tight waist on somebody.
Oh yeah, you beat him up.
You wear them down.
And that's exactly what I tell my kids. It's like, if you got a good gut wrench, and I had one back when I was coming up, it's like a body punch. Boom, boom.
Yep.
You're beating the ribs up, and it's like, oh, you know.
People can take headshots, man. When you
Yeah.
start beating up the body,
That's right.
they can't
man.
breathe.
Yep. The ribs. But man, the name flies past me, but it's he had a book out called My Crazy Life.
Oh, you talking about
Tattoos, Mexican mafia type
Yeah.
situation.
yeah. I can't remember who you're talking about
Oh
either.
man. Anyway, yeah.
And Tyson.
Oh,
Yeah,
Tyson was that dude, man.
Tyson would be upsetting everybody that got the pay-per-view and
Tyson was
done
that
in
dude,
10
man.
seconds.
That's when he started wearing the no socks.
The no
with the
socks. Yeah,
with the
just coming
wrestling
out with
shoes.
a towel around his
Yeah, that's it,
cutout
man.
towel.
Yeah, black everything, you know.
Yeah, and then the UFC came out, and that kind of changed the game.
It did.
I remember when watching UFC 1 and with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
they got the pay-per-view, and they were kind of like debating whether it was going to be like WWF, whether it's going to be kind of staged, and then we seen that man's tooth get kicked out of his mouth, and I was like, it's real.
Yo.
I want to do that.
You know what? And I know you have a background in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
That's some serious stuff.
yeah. And we're gonna talk about jiu-jitsu
Yeah, that's some
and
serious
how
stuff.
it goes back into your
That's where the
world here.
respect started coming for that particular sport, because I was like, man, that's dangerous.
Yeah, it's wrestling.
in
Only
your
you got
pocket.
more options to end it.
That's
you know?
right. That's
So,
right.
So you were a 2-time state champion.
Mm-hmm.
You were a Fargo national champion. So obviously the next thing to come up is college. So
Yeah.
I know you probably had a lot of schools looking at you. Maybe walk me through the process of how you ended up making the choice to go to Iowa State under Bobby Douglas.
So, again, Ellis Holt, longtime coach. He was my junior high coach and high school coach. Not too many people have that, that blessing in their life to have a coach like that follows you all through your beginning to your end of your high school career. So he would always talk about, of course, John Smith was there. John Smith came in the picture because he would be, like in the 90s or 91, he became the new coach for Okie State.
Mm-hmm.
Stan Abel, the man Abel, was the coach at OU. So, of course, a lot of those colleges, especially home colleges, were trying to get at me. Local colleges were trying to get at me. But
Why wouldn't they?
Okie State got in trouble with the NCAA, so they couldn't really offer any scholarships, right? So they're like, yeah, you can apply for some loans. But I'm like, dude, no. My parents are like, no, we want, our boys got this and that, these accolades, 2-time state champ coming out of Oklahoma, undefeated, national title, kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah.
We got some stock, So Okie State, they tried to get me there, but they couldn't really offer any scholarships for another 2 years. Of course, I had a lot of national team members who went, like Hardell Moore, Stephen Schmidt, Scotty Renee. A lot of those names end up going there. And it got worked out somehow. But since I was the oldest of 5 kids, I didn't want to put that, financial grind on my parents. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I want a full ride. And that's what we were looking for. So the time I was coming up, I always heard about a man by the name of Bobby Douglas, right? And African-American coach, done a lot of good things. He was the first African-American coach to win an NCAA title while at Arizona State. Now, there's a neighboring town called Marlow, Oklahoma. Ray Miller, he was an NCAA champion from Indian, a Native American kid. He was a national champion for Bobby. And there was some talks with my parents and his parents about Bobby Douglas. And they had nothing but good things to say about him. You know, Bobby's going to get you your education. He cares about a lot of his kids. We weren't hearing that so much about some of these other coaches.
Right.
You know, because then it's like, you know, they usually get the most out of you, and then, you know, what's next?
Yeah, what's the next one?
What's the next step? But the main thing with me and my parents was the education piece about, you know, Bobby cared a lot about his athletes. Plus, there was a connection. I was blessed enough to not only be coached by Ellis Holt, but also by Mickey Martin. Mickey Martin, old school guy. And when we talk about like old school wrestling, he and his father were like the first father and son NCAA champions in the history of wrestling. Mickey Martin was good friends with Bobby Douglas, right? That was my channel.
Yeah, connections.
Yeah, it was a big time channel and connection. And he would always talk about Bobby. He's great. He gets his athletes through. He does a lot. He's a tactician, you know, a lot of technique. And he learns, he's like the Yoda of wrestling.
Right.
So I heard so much about him. So Arizona State was definitely where I wanted to go. But Mickey was like, man, he's a good guy. He's going to look out for you.
So you're like, I'm in.
I'm in. So I got to meet Bobby while working the NCAA tournament when it was in Oklahoma City. So I guess this would have been 92, somewhere around there. Those who were in the finals or who were state champions for Oklahoma got to work the meet. We were towel boys or working the whatever. We were runners, bout runners during that time. And that's when we got to see some of the big
computers
teams.
back then?
No computers back then. Pad and pencil, man. And running the carbon copy sheets back and forth. But this was at the NCAA tournament, D1. It was held in Oklahoma City that year. And I got introduced to Bobby, you know, during that time. And I was like, it was like in awe.
Yeah.
But I also met some other people as well. You know, I got to see Dan Gable. I got to see that great Iowa team back in the 90s that won everything.
Yeah.
You know, it actually started with them. They won everything. I mean, and they had the murderous row during that time. I'm talking about Zappadol, Brands, Steiner Brothers, all up the lineup. I mean, they were killer. But also you had Okie State. They were bad too. I mean, they had some great wrestlers. It was some great wrestling during those years. Kevin Randleman, got to see him in action. You know, he would become a UFC fighter later on.
UFC fighter as well. Yeah.
Oh my God! And one of the biggest heavyweights I ever seen, next to Stephen Neal, was Sylvester Turkey. He was a heavyweight out of North Carolina, and he was tall. He was like 6-something, almost 7 foot.
Jeez.
And that's when I saw he and Kurt Angle wrestled.
Kurt Angle, yeah.
In the finals. And Kurt Angle was a little bit shorter for a heavyweight. But man, he hit the sweetest duck under for a heavyweight. I was like, oh my goodness. You know. But, you know, going back to recruitment, Arizona State, Okie State, and Nebraska were probably my top picks. There were some other schools out there, but, you know, I thought always about staying in the Midwest. Brad Pendriff, if you remember that name, he wrestled for Iowa. He would become a coach assistant coach at Nebraska before he went to UNI. Man, he was on me, and I was so close to.
He
going
was
to
cooking
Nebraska.
for you, man. He was bidding for
he was cooking. He would call me up, and it was just like we had so much rapport, you know, because it wasn't with Brad. It wasn't all about, you know, wrestling. Just, hey man, how's home life going and this and that. You know, what are your hobbies and stuff? And he was talking to me like I was his son.
Yeah, you got a vibe. You got a vibe with him.
And I definitely had a vibe with him, man. You know, but you know, Bobby ended up winning the pick, especially. He ended up being my top pick, Bobby Douglas, because I always heard so many good things about him. like I said, we had somebody from a neighboring town. Parents would always call up, say, "Hey, man, Bobby's a good guy. He's a great guy." You know, never heard anything bad about him. You know, I did hear that he was hard on his black athletes. I mean, you know, coming from my household, yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference? You know, so but it's definitely that attracted me to that, you know, because it's like, you know, my dad's hard on me. Who is it?
Yeah.
You know, if they want the best out of you, want you to do well, they're gonna be hard on you. So I took it for what it was on that. And again, Brad Pendrith, he would have been runner-up for sure. Okie State was there, but they kind of started recruiting me a little bit late. And even till this day, if you talk to John Smith would be like, "Man, we let that one get away." Every time I see him, he say, "Man, we let you get away, Hinson." You know what I mean? And I love that family till this day, man. The Smith family, known for their wrestling. Pat, Leroy, John.
That'd been interesting to see, though. I mean, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I love seeing you in the Iowa State uniform. But like, he would have been a great style for you too.
Yeah, man. And you know, and just because anybody that comes out of Okie, man, you know, low singles, you know, getting down low, quick. And I wasn't great with riding, and I didn't need it, but I was great on my feet.
Yeah.
And I would have learned a lot from John, honestly. But definitely, you know, like I said, Bobby was the man. And then it sealed the deal for me when he left Arizona State, called me up and said, "I'm going to Iowa State." And I'm like, "What?"
That's crazy.
I'm like, "Going to Iowa State?" Ooh. You know,
could have worked out any other year. Could have been any other year.
And he's like, "Hey, you'll have the opportunity to wrestle on TV." Because back then there wasn't many options to wrestle on TV.
Yeah, there's not this going on back then either.
Yeah, and it would have been like IPTV.
Yeah.
And that was like, what? You know, that was a huge stage for wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a huge outlet for wrestling.
Got to get them ears up.
Yeah,
the
man.
Antenna up.
I loved it, man. So he's like, "Yeah, you're going to have IPTV. You're going to be wrestling in front of people on TV." I'm like, "Yes." And, you know, another one was just trying to catch Jeff McGinnis.
Yeah.
Because, man, it was so close with him, man. It was just, he's a great wrestler. You know, smart wrestler, crafty, but he was a rider. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would do roll after roll. I'm like, I'm almost out, you know. But he was that dude. He was that dude. And I'm like I said, I want to join your team. I want to try to beat you.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm gonna chase you down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna chase you down. I gotta aim for something.
Yeah.
You know, but he was a great competitor, and that's what kind of drew me to Iowa State as well. Knowing
because you knew he's gonna get that
matchup.
Yes.
Yes. And also not only that, but you know, Dan Gable. You know, even when I was coming up, you
want to compete against that.
Yeah. I mean, you started learning wrestling, you know, especially with Coach Holt. You know, we're from Okie, but at the same time, we learned a lot about Hawkeye wrestling, how they wrestle, get physical, you know, snap down, get around. It wasn't anything fancy, you know, just assert your dominance a little bit when you're in a tie-up position, especially when you catch people on their knees and boom, snap down, get around. You know, until this day, man, I tell them all about Terry and Tom Brands, you know, and there's some other stories behind that too that we could talk about, man. But it's just being around that type of company. I love it, man. I mean, that's why I'm in Iowa till this day.
Yeah.
They love wrestling here, man.
That's right.
I encourage anybody who wants to come to Iowa, come wrestle.
Yeah, this is one of the toughest states there is. I mean, even when you date it back to like the Civil War and you look at volunteers that were in the military, we're just hardworking, working class people that are just built for wrestling.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's in the water. Some in the corn.
Man, I tell you that this is how kingdoms are ruled.
That's right. That's right. And we're good people too. So
yeah.
So you made your way to Iowa State. So tell me, you know, what that was like wrestling at Hilton.
Hilton Coliseum, man. I loved it. Like I said, you get around a wrestling community and a true wrestling community, they're gonna support you. No matter if you wrestle for the Cyclones, no matter if you wrestle for Iowa, UNI, Wartburg, Grandview, on down the line. Everybody supports everybody. Everybody's tough. But just being in that arena is huge, especially when you look back at, they have this documentary about the match between Iowa and Iowa State.
The rivalry.
The rivalry is
It
huge.
just went on just last weekend in football.
Yes, it's huge, man. I mean, a lot of history in that building. You think about Gable, Nate Carr, and I had the poster of Nate Carr, the no steroids or the anti-drug campaign where he's sweating. He's holding up the one finger. That was on my wall. That was in our wrestling room, as well as Lee Kemp and all that. But it's just being in that venue was awesome, as well as Carver Hawkeye Arena. I had some battles there too. And my first NCAA tournament was in Carver.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's probably the most coveted for me, just because, I was a freshman going in, young, had to battle through some upperclassmen, and man, that was tough. It was tough, but it was eye-opening, and man, I loved it, man. And just the way Carver is kind of built, it's like a gladiator,
Like a gladiator arena, Coliseum.
gladiator arena,
Yeah.
right? And you're just looking around and just, hey, let's go.
Yeah.
But everybody's all about the wrestling during that time. You got Fandemonium there, man. And when I went for third place, I had to beat a kid named Glenn Naraka. He was from Oregon. Big Greco head, man. He threw me a couple times. I would end up reversing him, and I ended up beating him like NOT with a takedown. But the crowd went crazy. And it was Iowa fans, UNI fans, Iowa State fans, of course, and even people who weren't Iowa related. It was just
Yeah,
crazy.
they're fans of yours.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I loved it, man. And like I said,
Yeah, I was a huge fan of yours too.
man,
So.
I love it. Appreciate it, man. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Great time, always,
So, what would you say your most, and we're talking about college, what would you say your most memorable experience was?
Oh, man.
And it could be wrestling, non-wrestling, doesn't matter.
You know what? I got a couple. Of course, being in the NCAA tournament, winning 3 conference titles. And I say 3 conference titles because there was a change in the conference.
In the conference.
During my time.
Yeah.
So when I first won it, I was a sophomore. I got beat my freshman year in OT by a kid named Stephen Bear. He was a senior from Nebraska. And back then it was a Big 8. Big 8 was tough, even though we only had like 4 or 5 schools that wrestled in it. It was tough. It was always a grind. So I would be the last Big 8 champ, but also the first Big 12 champ. So I would win the Big 8 championship. They changed it to Big 12.
Big 12,
then I would become the first Big 12 champion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, being a 4-time All-American, it was tough, man. But the greatest memory I would have was when I had the opportunity to go to the 96 Olympics, and see that for myself, along with some of my other teammates that were able to make the trip. And wrestling's all about opportunities. Mm-hmm. Once that door opens, take it. Step forward.
It's not going to be open for very long.
Not. No, it's not.
There's always somebody at the door waiting too.
Always somebody at the door. So we had the opportunity during those days where, and they still do it, where you have the opportunity to train with the Olympic team because they need fresh bodies in there.
Mm-hmm. Now, where was you training at for that? Was that in Colorado?
So because they were looking for a closer spot, and then I think during that time they were going through the transition of being away from Foxcatcher.
Okay. Yeah.
I also had the opportunity to go to Foxcatcher.
Really?
Yes. That was an awesome experience.
I bet.
Honestly, I know you've seen the movie and the
Yeah, yeah. I don't look at the movie like that. I look at
So
from a wrestling standpoint. I would
DuPont. He was who he was.
Yeah.
You know, dude was very smart, but he also had the mental illness side.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but when you talk about RTCs and clubs, that's where it started.
Mm-hmm.
That idea.
Mm-hmm.
It all started with the, DuPont and Foxcatcher. But man, it was so successful because, he had the money for it.
Yeah. And that kind of answers a lot of questions that we have like in today's current culture with like what do wrestlers do after college.
Right. And we'll go into that, and which led me to, my career in law enforcement, because it was one of those decisions I had to make and try to support myself. But, I was able to go to Foxcatcher and train, see a lot of those Olympic guys, train with them, get beat on, meet some other college kids in the process, but also knowing about that whole saga with Foxcatcher was huge.
Yeah, because you were a part of that story.
I'm like, man, I'm part of that.
You didn't see me in the background of the movie?
Man, I was in there.
If they were going to play a movie with you in it, okay, here we go.
I understood.
Who's gonna play Dwight Hinson?
Right.
Who's gonna play Dwight Hinson in the new Foxcatcher movie we're about to put on?
Right. Oh man, hey, I tell you what, man.
Denzel. Who's gonna play you?
Yeah. Wesley, maybe. Wesley Snipes. Just because I like Blade, but that whole saga with Foxcatcher being part of that, but also leading up to, because like I said, they were going from the transition from training at Foxcatcher, the OTC, Olympic Training Center, but they wanted to be closer to Atlanta, right? So they had the opportunity.
Back on the East Coast for you.
Yes. So they had to pick a location that was closer to where they were competing, which is in Atlanta. So it would have been Tennessee, Chattanooga.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm familiar with Chattanooga.
Yeah, man. It's nice town. It's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Had a good time, but as a young athlete, you trained and you partied. I'm gonna be serious.
Yeah.
You trained and you partied. You had a good time, because it's like you had opportunities.
And that's the age you're out of high school. You no longer got those distractions.
That's right.
Anymore.
That's right. And you don't always get those opportunities to travel like that.
Yeah.
And plus engage with high caliber wrestling. So there were times, man, we were just young. We would go out drinking. We'd come back, be like, oh, we got to be up. We're going to get our ass kicked. We knew we were going to get our ass kicked. But it was what it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that particular same summer came about, and Bobby was like, hey, we know that the camp is done, but do you guys want to stay a couple extra days? Because there were tickets floating around, Olympic tickets for wrestling. So I'm like, I'll go.
Yeah, let's go.
Let me call up mom and dad. Hey, mom, dad, I'm going to put a little extra on the credit card. Can you send me some dough? And we made the trip out of it, man. We got to travel with them, with the team. And during that time, I was training partners for Kendall Cross and also Tom Brands. It was an honor watching these guys train.
Yeah.
Because these are guys I looked up to as a kid. And then having to go out there and battle.
And you're in the same spot as you're in the same place as them.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, and these guys, man, they suffered injury after injury, but you would never know.
Mm-hmm.
The way they performed that year, and it had to be one of the greatest showcases, but also showing for the U.S. team during that time with Kurt Angle, Townsend Saunders, Kendall Cross. A lot of those guys, man. It was Melvin Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it was a Starrcade event, but it was, man, I was so starstruck by it. It was just like, I'm blessed to be in this situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Until this day, man, we had fun with those guys, because they would have their off times and we had time to hang out with them and just get to know them. Kerr, Smashing Machine.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
It was a great time.
He's a monster.
He was a beast. And the dude was like chiseled. I'm like, man, he looked Adonis, man,
Sculpted.
He was. But it was fun seeing those guys. And going back to Foxcatcher,
I got who's going to play you in Foxcatcher. Foxcatcher. It's going to be Martin Lawrence.
Martin? No, bro. No. You know what? I say maybe Tay Diggs, but I don't know.
Diggs.
I don't know
there we go.
For that. I don't know Tay Diggs ready for that. But like I said, with that whole Foxcatcher, man, you were part of that saga, but also it was the last time I got to see Schultz, Dave Schultz. And, before his passing, we were working out, and it was Kendall and I. And I took Kendall Cross down, and I was hitting that gut. And if you know Kendall Cross, he's called Gumby because he's so flexible. Oh, my goodness. I went to hit a gut wrench of some sort, and that dude just stepped over me. And then
put you on your back.
Yeah, and Schultz was watching. He was like, hey, let me help you with that. And, man, that's golden.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
You have that.
Man, I treasure the most, man.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that dude was the man.
Yeah.
And he took time, and he was like that. He took time out of his schedule, out of his training regimen to come over and speak to you and say, hey, this is how you need to hit that next time.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's deep.
You got that one.
I love it.
You got that one.
So
thanks for sharing that.
That stood out for me, man. That stood out for me because, that's just those opportunities, being around those great guys, especially after those guys won the gold. We went back to whatever venue we're celebrating, and they would come up to you. You're just a young college kid, and I said, thank you. This is for
you. Help put that work in.
You helped me get to this point. Appreciate you training with me.
That's awesome.
And they were, man, I loved it. I mean, so that
you got that one for life.
For life, man.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good one in the Dwight Hinson story, played by Martin Lawrence.
Yeah. Martin, man. Marty Martin.
He's the only one that's gonna have the jokes. That could stick with the jokes with you.
There you go.
Speaking of Gumby, we brought this name up already. He was one my second to last guest, Jeff McGinnis.
Yes, sir.
I had him on the show. It was great having him. So Jeff, if you're listening, thanks for coming on. But he did mention, coming up doing this, maybe doing a match with you, bringing up the old time match. I know you did the corn cob.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
That was like what, 3 or 4 years ago? So?
That was a while ago. I got to get ready, man.
Maybe we could put that together sometime.
We'll see.
Sign the contract.
We'll see.
We'll get the old mans out there. We'll all get out there.
Jeff was a great competitor. He's definitely one that you had to chase because he was that dude.
Yeah. You mentioned he had his flexibility, but his ability to ride. Like I when I watched Jeff McGinnis compete, and look back at old matches of his. He, in my opinion, he was doing jiu-jitsu, like the way he rode the back and the way he controlled. There was a lot of stuff that you see now. Like me and him talked about it as like things that they teach in the scramble now. Those are actually techniques that are in Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I was so close. I mean, we met a couple times at NCAAs. We met in all-star meets. But it was just like, he can ride, and with college, that riding time is huge. It's huge,
especially if you're only gonna have like a 1-point max.
Yeah, man.
Every time
and we're tight as it is, and he was like a leech on top. And like I said, anytime you would leave something open, boom, he'll put a hook in. Ride you heavy on one side. You try to roll, he's gonna roll with you.
Yeah.
And even the times I did take him down, it was on the edge or something like that. It was never in the middle, But every time I get to a leg, he would do splits.
Yeah, he's great from his seat, Most people will just belly out there.
Right.
And he's really good. That's what I'm saying. He's very similar to jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Like we can pull guard, we can sit on our back, but we're really good at recomposing and staying with whatever's wrapped up or whatever's entangled.
Yeah. I respect it so much because it was like, if I'd have known that type of stuff, I was like, man, I'd have been so close, And especially now with these kids, man, these kids are doing certain rolls,
crazy.
Like going after the ankle.
Doing those little Eminari rolls.
It's nice. But, I mean, whatever you do, you got to commit to it.
And you got to commit to the basics, too.
I love it. Hey, you hear that? Kids, stick to the basics.
Stick to the basics.
Because everybody wants to do the fancy and flashy stuff.
Yep.
But if you don't have the basics and the foundation, you're just rolling around.
Because if it doesn't work, Yep.
you got to go back to basics anyway.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, that, you know, especially with club stuff, man, I always teach the basics, but I say you learn the basics first, and then we'll go
Get the
to a
cool.
higher
We'll get
level.
the cool stuff later.
Yeah, we'll get the cool stuff later, but man, make sure you can finish the takedown. You know?
So one thing I want to ask you about here is like, there's got to be a balance in life, but there's also got to be a balance when you're competing in sports, right? And you got to find that balance to avoid burnout. So maybe you share with us a little bit about how you avoided burnout.
Oh man, you know, everybody's different. It depends on what your threshold is, what your temperament is. For me, like I said, everybody's different. There were times that I would get up and wait like crazy, you know, and I always thought when I look back at it, that was the best for me, is to pull down, because that's where I was my fiercest, my meanest. I would get the most out of it. If I was up, I was too comfortable, right? I always wanted to have that edge, so my idea was to always cut, just to have that edge. Because I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, you know. Man, you know, I get along with everybody. But in this sport, you know, I thought for me, and just coming up how I grew up, I had to find a dark spot, which is losing weight, getting down to weight. But after a while, man, especially when you get older,
Yeah.
cutting weight ain't it.
Yeah.
You know, because you do have your injuries. And like we were talking earlier, I didn't get any injuries, serious injuries, until after I was done NCAA wrestling.
Yeah.
After I graduated and went on to, like, you know, on the circuit, wrestling on freestyle on the circuit. But I was still cutting weight, you know, and you get older and your body matures a little bit, and it's like, dude, you're done cutting down to 26. What are we doing? You know?
Yeah, I used to fight at 155 pounds.
Yeah.
And that was always just a big cut for me to come down from like 75, 80.
Yeah.
You know, just as a man, you know, not
Right.
a young person.
And you want to get into, like, you know, putting muscle on. That doesn't always help,
Nope.
because you're going to lose.
Yep.
You lose your strength. You're going to lose that muscle mass.
Gonna burn that muscle right off.
And it's like I said, yo, it's up and down. It's up and down. And your body's like, dude, what are we doing? You know, and like I said, these days, the kids have nutritionists. They have these special trainers out there. You know, I want to say we had that, but we didn't. You know, you were
I didn't have it.
No, I mean, and you were kind of on your own.
Yeah.
You know,
it was
and
on
when,
my- yeah.
and when I look back at, you know, just my career with that, it's like, dude, I should have just went up. You know, I would have had so much fun. You know, and there were times when,
But that's that grit, though. I mean,
Right,
you
right,
learn that grit, or being in
right.
the trenches, right? You
Right.
you learn that grind from resiliency, you know,
Yeah,
and you don't get complacent when you know you got to like come back and
Correct.
you know, go through that process all over again.
so there were times when, especially during college, man, it's like I would get up heavy. Coach was like, oh, you got to get back down 26. Or like during my time, they changed the weight classes from 126 to 133, where they added 7 pounds each weight. So I was kind of in between there. But man, I was like weighing 150, 160 at one point. Because, you know, during the summer, it's like you chill out, you go to these camps.
Yep.
Everybody's like, hey, we're going to pay you to come to this camp. We're going to feed you and all that. So you partake. And you train, but I mean, you're growing too. Not taller, but mass.
That's what I was
muscle.
asking about
muscle.
Jabari. Like, what's he looking
Man,
like? you know?
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah. He's going to feel it.
Kids grow. Like some
Yeah.
kids mature faster than others, and their
Right.
bodies just shoot up. I mean, the same
Right.
thing happened to me. I wrestled 112 as a freshman, and then you know,
Yeah.
I'm up
Yeah.
the next 2 weight classes because I just grew so much as a sophomore.
And I tell you, there were times when, before I would even start going down, I would wrestle up at a lot of the open tournaments. For a couple of duels with Iowa State. I would wrestle up at 34, and I had some great wins. You know, why I didn't stay up, I don't know. But my thing was, I need to cut down because I'm too
yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm too comfortable.
Yeah,
Like that.
yeah.
I'm walking around smiling.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be smiling? You know, I'm
Supposed to be
eating
miserable right
yeah,
now.
Yeah. I'm eating what I want to eat. But now these days, that's kind of what it is. You know, it's like, get to where you're healthy too, but can function. And like I said, now you got people who specialize in just
nutrition,
agility, nutrition. And that's the go-to, man. I mean, like I said, if I could do it all over again.
It's with the increase in like those skill sets of having like nutritionists and movement coaches and stuff like that, and even like mental coaches, right? Sports therapists and stuff like that. It like you have all these specialties now that you don't have to. It's almost the opposite. Work less. It's that Russian approach, right? Have fun with it. Learn how to do some of these things. Work, have less harder practices, and you have healthier body for.
And I wasn't lazy at all, but like during my later times in college, I would get docked for winning a match by 2 points, 3 points, 1 point, and dude, when it comes down to it, it was the nutrition. I mean, it was like you get up and it's just like, dude, you can't cut this weight like you used to. Mm-hmm. And your body just doesn't respond the way it needs to.
Nope.
Not like you were when you were a freshman. Mm-hmm. Not like you were when you were a sophomore. Man, you're getting older.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I did hear the criticism, because like, damn, Hinson, you should be scoring more points. But in my mind, I'm like, dude, my body's tired. Mm-hmm. I'm fighting my body right now.
Yeah.
I'm fighting my body right now.
Yeah, but that's what leads to injuries too.
It does. And one of the, and it woke me up, man, because one of the losses I had was to a young man by the name of Doug Schwab. He is now the coach at UNI.
Yeah.
Not to take anything against Doug. I mean, nothing against Doug. He was great. But he was definitely one of those young, spry guys. And you didn't know who was coming out the woodwork for Iowa. Mm-hmm. So this had been a home duel. I ended up losing to him, and I got DQ'd.
Lost your cool?
Lost my cool, but it was because I kept calling timeout because I was cramping up. Mm-hmm. This is when my body's fighting me a little bit. Like, dude, you can't cut weight like this anymore.
Yeah.
Or like you've been doing it. So I had to, after that loss, I got DQ'd because I got counted out. I was taking it to him, and for him, he was just coming after me. I was being stingy, not getting up nothing, but I'm like, dude, my body's cramping,
Yeah.
And, I paid the cost on that one. It wasn't that he beat me physically. It was just you beat yourself when you don't do it right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Well, with all that experience under your belt, you coach now. Your son, Jabari, got second at state this year.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about your guys' relationship and how he got into wrestling and what you're hoping for him in the future.
It's, so, I was talking to a friend not too long ago, and he was talking about, me and my son were this and that, and when they start getting older, they start smelling themselves a little bit. So they have a little success, and they're like,
I got a 15-year-old upstairs that thinks he's big boy.
Yeah, exactly. Start smelling himself a little bit and start questioning, why you ask him to do this and that. But it goes, hey, dude, I'm your father. I've been through this before. He said, yeah, but that's the old way of doing it. I'm like, oh, here we go. So we often have these little debates on how you should train.
Right.
But at the end of the day, he'll listen. He's one of the. I'm lucky with him because he never really, when it comes to the season, he'll listen. After the season, it's like he does his own thing, so I kind of let him have his way, to a certain extent. But just remind him, hey, dude, every year's a new slate. You can't survive off what you ate last year.
Yeah.
You got a new slate because there's always somebody new coming up. Mm-hmm. You're not going to always be at that same weight. You're going to have to get stronger to make that transition to this newer.
Yeah.
And it's a different feel.
And even situations are different.
Yeah,
you don't know how you're going to feel next January at a certain tournament. You could be cramping up that day.
Right.
Circumstances.
So I'm like, so we let the past go and think about what's ahead of us, and you always want your kids or whatever to be better than you. I said, so I was like, dude, learn from my mistakes. Mm-hmm. I could definitely tell you about that time I wrestled with Doug Schwab or I wrestled McGinnis and didn't have the flexibility he had, and which helped him win those matches, those tight matches, 1-point matches. I said, yeah, work on that flexibility. And I think he's a different wrestler than I am, man. For one, he's a smarter kid than when I was his age. He's goal driven. I have a daughter. She was in gymnastics for a long time, and my approach with her was way different, and it was a learning experience because I was kind of hard on her to the point where she was like, Dad, you getting on me too much, and I don't even want you at my events. You know what I'm saying? So it was like I had to tone my approach down a little bit with this, my second kid. So, I've been asked many times if I wanted to coach Jabari in high school. I'm like, look, I'm being dad. I do my coaching with my club, but I'm gonna trust my high school coaches to do what they have to do. If you have any questions, just ask me.
Yeah.
But I gotta let him do his thing.
Yeah.
Of course, if there's issues where I need to step in, then I'll step in.
Right.
But for the most part, he's doing what he should be doing, man. He's trying to get healthy right now. Just today I asked him, I said, man, you do some hills? He said, Dad, I got to watch my shoulder. I said, but it's your shoulders, not your legs.
It's a different track system.
Yeah, exactly.
The track down there,
right.
And the turrets up here.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, but it's still the motion. I said, man, I get it. And, you don't want to push him so much, but because you want everything to heal like it's supposed to.
Right, yep.
So I guess that'd be my, that's the resistance I get from him sometimes because he knows his own body.
Yeah.
And you have to. You have to know your own body, and he does.
Yeah.
He does the right things as far as nutrition and all that stuff. But yeah, every now and then he'll bring something up. Well, did you do this against such and such? And I'm like, oh, here we go.
Right.
They're gonna bring up the old stuff. But it's a new era, especially with these kids, and they got more resources than anything.
Yes, they do.
And take advantage of it.
Tons of it.
Take advantage of it, man, because it's out there.
That's what I tell my son. Take advantage of all these opportunities and resources that are flying at you.
Yeah.
So, speaking of resistance, I want to move off into another topic here, in a place that you may find resistance in your life now. So you were a police officer.
Yes, sir.
And maybe talk me through about, like where you're at currently, what you're doing up in Ames with that, and like maybe some of your past experience as a police officer.
Yeah. So, I worked with Iowa State University Police Department. Not security. I've never been security, but it's police department. We actually have a police department. So after graduation, I worked as like a volunteer graduate coach with ISU. So I had the opportunity of going through a couple coaches at the program. One was Bobby Douglas. I was able to stay on staff and coach with him. I was able to stay on staff and coach with Kale Sanderson. And I was able to assist with Kevin Jackson when he came. And now Dresser invites me in every now and then to speak to these kids. So they took advantage of the resources because, at the beginning of the year, you have new incoming students. They come in and, they have their Big 12 spiel about, just NIL stuff or being a great student, athlete, academic stuff, counseling, things that they're given when they come to the university resources. So I'm also their resource as well. When I was a cop with Iowa State, I would go in and give talks to them about, staying out the negative limelight. Every year is new. You're not the only athlete that is coming to our program.
Yep.
And everybody has the same idea of, I'm going to take over the world when I'm a freshman. They get caught up in the partying. But I tell them, I said, look at where you are. Is there any professional team in the state of Iowa?
Yeah.
Nope. College. That's our source of entertainment here. So you're always going to be in the limelight. It's how you respond to it.
Yeah.
And of course, during my time as a college kid, I've made some mistakes.
We all have.
I've gotten in trouble, but it wasn't to the point where it made big time news or anything like that. But I corrected that, you know. So through the years, these coaches have been able to reach out to me and use me as a resource when I was with the police department. I worked there for 21 years. When COVID came around, I lost my mother, and then I lost my father 6 months later. That created a change on how I moved and how I approached my life. And, you know, you always want to do something you want to become old with, right? You want to grow old with. Of course, you can't get that back, especially with family life, you know.
Yeah.
So I was always working OT. I was always working holidays, birthdays. I wouldn't be there, you know, missing out on all kind of stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, man, I needed to be there for my mom, especially because she had Alzheimer's, and she was just, it was downgraded, man. It was just, she was going downhill with it, and we knew that. And then COVID came around. Dad got sick with it and passed away because of COVID 6 months later. But it's just put a lot of things in perspective for me about family life, man. I can't get that back.
It's time.
It's time to make a change.
Tell
and
everybody,
a
like,
choice.
when I'm doing like work or
Yeah.
something, people are like, "Hey, I would like to give you some money for this." I'm like, time is the most valuable thing that I have.
Exactly.
So let's think about that when we're setting things up.
That's all we got. When
That's
you
all we
look at
got.
it, that's
Yeah.
all we got. So I was like, you know, if there's anything else I want to do, and of course, I think for this particular position I'm in right now is Title IX compliance. So we're like the complaint hub for anything Title IX related, which would be under our umbrella. It would be like sexual misconduct, drugs like dating violence, sexual assaults, stalking, anything under that umbrella. We investigate, but we also investigate any complaint that is discrimination and harassing based on protected class. So sex, gender, race, religion, on down
It's
the
like
line.
an EO. You
Yes,
guys are like
yes.
an EO.
Yeah, exactly. So we're with the Office of Equal Opportunity. That's our department. So I'm right under. We report to the president, Wendy Winterstein at Iowa State. So it's a different line of work. I like doing it because I'm able to do reports, but we're not the deciding factor as far as
Right. You guys just do the write-up.
We do the write-up, and we send it to the particular office that's going to do the adjudication. And I work with former officers, police officers, 2 of them, and I also work with a couple of lawyers, former lawyers. Actually, our director right now is the former prosecutor for the county. You know, so you learn a lot from those individuals.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a change of pace because you know I'm getting back to family stuff, enjoying my time.
Good for you.
It's just you can't get that stuff back.
Yeah.
So it's it's great to see my daughter in school, my son doing his thing. You know, hopefully he wants to pursue wrestling when he gets to college. But if not, college is college, man. If you want to do that, if you want to do that, but people have other venues too that they want to engage in.
For sure.
Respect it.
So yeah, being a cop in today's climate, what are your thoughts about that?
It's I look at it and it's all about engagement and outreach with your community. Stuff that happened in Missouri.
Yeah, where did that go?
Oh my goodness, Minneapolis, and it's all about I'll tell people you're gonna have hard times, but it's all in how you approach it, how you respond. Is the word is how you respond. And anybody can be a judge because you be like, man, he should have did this, he should have did that. But when you're in that position, it's a tough call, but
Because the human factor.
it's a human factor. It's fight or flee for anybody.
Yeah.
But you're in a position where, you're an armed individual, or you're as an officer, you're armed.
And you got a couple tools.
And you got a lot of tools, right? And it's not the weapon. Your sidearm shouldn't be your first,
Right.
go to. And you talk about the levels of engagement. You know,
Your ROE.
that's right. That's right. So, and I I go back with wrestling on this is that, you got to train, train, drill.
Yeah.
And luckily for athletes, student athletes, they have the opportunity to train because it's what they do. But I think with a lot of these departments, they don't always have that opportunity and don't have the resources or the time to do it. So that's when we get caught off, or excuse me, law enforcement gets caught off guard on situations like that, and it's a surprise. And then that's when we resort back to fight or flee, or go into what's going to be the easy answer for us,
Right.
which ain't always right.
Yeah. Well, that's where your training is the most important thing as a police officer, especially as an operator. Like in the military, we got teams.
Yeah.
And most police officers are in a a one-on-one situation.
Yeah.
I just had a friend in town, Jason, the wrestler Kelly. He was over at the West Des Moines Police Department doing some combatives over there.
Yeah.
I'm a combatives guy myself and spear related.
Oh, yeah.
So spear instructor.
Yes.
So having those things, where you have an individual that's one-on-one with another person, I've always said, you got to, it's all about training.
Yes.
And I'd like to hear from you, from your personal opinion about like, where do you feel like police officers training's at and where that value is?
So like you, during my time with the police department, I was also DT instructor, taser instructor, OC. And if you don't feel it, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's important to go through drill situations.
Yeah. Realistic scenario-based training.
Yeah. Force on force type situation. But you also have to feel it, because we go through we do walkthroughs, and that's not realistic.
One of the combatives drill, I still use this with my jiu-jitsu class, and we do like scenario training, like we use like if you pull a rubber knife out, right? If I pull the rubber knife out, you're going to quick to grab it, right? But if I have a shock knife that's got a taser behind it, it's got electrodes behind it.
Love it.
You're you're more like what it would be like in a real knife fight.
Correct. So my approach is, if they can find the time, because it's always, whenever when I used to go to these trainings, it was always, well, we don't have time because we only have so many officers, or we got to find the funding, to even get the resources or the tools that we need to help us train.
Yeah.
But and it's like with wrestling, man. You can, man, if it's not a mat, you could be on a rug. It's space and opportunity. You find space and opportunity anywhere and everywhere.
Well, wrestling is one of the best things to start with for police officers, especially like the Greco-Roman style, because it's all upper body underhooks, stuff like that, right?
Elbows in.
That's one of the best, because all your operation stuff is here.
Exactly.
Like it can be in these places where you're going to need your upper body to stay up. And jiu-jitsu is another powerful one. That's a great discussion, just because I've worked with a lot of police officers on training jiu-jitsu, and then the most recent stuff is like, we can't do chokes. And it's like, here's where I kind of get into this, like chokes versus arm locks. Like we got the twisty locky stuff from like DT, right? Which some police officers can't do that stuff. They don't have the coordination or the time, actual time to be able to perfect, grabbing a wrist lock on somebody and dragging a big guy down to the ground.
Right.
But you have, like, when you see these things like with chokes, like, oh, he used a choke and he killed the guy. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean it's jujitsu.
Right.
If you're trained in jujitsu, when your man is defeated, know when you have him under control. Because control is the main source of that, right? Yep. It's not like like that Marine. There's the Marine that got arrested or went on trial for choking that guy in the substation. I'm like, he didn't do jujitsu. That's not jujitsu.
No.
He, one, he did the choking correct.
Right.
And two, he didn't let go when the guy was trying to.
Right.
I mean, he's rendered unconscious, you just let go.
Right.
You wake them back up. You know,
Yep.
that's every jiu-jitsu student knows this.
Yep. Yep.
So that's not jiu-jitsu, you know. And the same, I would argue the same thing for police officers. Is like they should be training jiu-jitsu because it's going to give the most amount of control, especially when the match hits the ground.
Yeah.
Right. Because we have a lot of things that we can, you know, render somebody to detain them.
Right.
So yeah.
So just to add to that is, I say weapon transition. It can go from your hands to your body, you know, just up and down, just like wrestling. Use what's available to you.
Yeah.
You know, if this doesn't work, you got to go to this. You know, just like if you're riding somebody.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of it doesn't have to be brute force. You have a smaller officer on a bigger suspect.
Yeah.
You have to know how to deflect. You have to know how to move, but find your opening.
Yeah.
You know, your opportunity when it's there. You know, and realize there's that factor: height, weight, size.
Yep.
All that good stuff, you know. And, you know, where jiu-jitsu comes in, you could learn a lot of these collar chokes using their, like, lapel, their collar.
Exactly.
That type of situation. Or what you have access to around you, you know. And it's just learning about a weapon system, having a weapon system in place and knowing how to transition just in case you have a malfunction.
Yeah, you got to have malfunction drills. That's got to be a part of your training.
It's huge. It's huge. You know,
'cause that's the thing. It's just like in the military when you go you know, the thing we used to do, and like when you draw a dry firearm,
Yep,
you know,
yep.
you got sports, right?
Yep,
you go
yep.
through these like quick,
Yeah.
take a knee and do all this
Yep,
stuff, and I'm
yep.
like, if the number 2 guy's running right at me and I'm down here
Right.
effing with my weapon, then I'm not going to be present for the fight. So you know,
Right.
you got to close the distance,
Yeah.
make the clinch.
You know, and man, I miss that type of stuff too.
Yeah,
But I've thought about maybe getting into jiu-jitsu myself, just learning a little bit more. But because I love teaching self-defense.
yeah,
Even like you know, they got the Krav Maga stuff.
yeah. That's great
That's some
stuff too.
serious stuff, man. But I love it. I love it, man. And plus, I'm able to use just wrestling knowledge. That all goes together, man.
That's right. Yeah, there's 2 parts of when I think about police officer, and like I said, I have my friend in town that teaches this stuff, and I should hook you guys up for sure. You know, a couple things come to my mind. I've taught a lot of special operations groups. I've taught a lot of the State Department guys, a lot of police officers, a lot of military, and like the ego, right? Ego's a huge killer, right? That's why,
big time.
like,
Big time.
most jiu-jitsu schools, they tell you to leave the ego at the door, you know, because
Right.
even wrestlers, I get a lot of good wrestlers that come into my school and they get humbled super
Yep.
quick because it's not wrestling. It's not just wrestling, right?
Right. Right.
But the other thing I think the problem is with police officers is risk assessment, and risk management, I should
Yep.
say,
Threat
right? So they're like,
assessment,
oh, I don't want to do this because it's going to like cause this, you know, like
Right.
we got to get over those things. And like you said, the more realistic the training environment is, you know, if you got like a guy in the room, right? A guy's one officer's trying to deal with this guy over here. This guy's probably been in 15 fights.
Right.
And he's been in 15 fights with more than one person
Right.
at a time.
Right.
You know, so when he goes OC and like he starts spraying the room, he sprays himself in the face, you know, now we got 2 officers sprayed in the face because, you know, we just don't have that realistic environment where this guy is used to this every day.
Yeah. And then also, most of the time, and you see a lot of these situations where it's the encounter.
Yeah.
It may be just verbal. Verbal. Like just they're criticizing the officer.
Yeah.
Why are you here? You know, why are you? I've never seen any type of training where, especially if you have a new cop coming in, and they haven't been in any type of environment where somebody's being, you know, just a butthead,
Yeah.
you know, in your face, yelling at you. Of course, you want to keep that distance.
Yep.
Right. But there's going to be times where people just talk, right? They're yelling at you. And some of these situations, that's when people start reaching for weapons. I'm talking about the officer. That's how they respond.
Yep.
You know, because such and such is yelling. You know,
And that escalates it.
and it escalates.
Yeah.
It. But you have to learn how to read them a little bit more.
Yeah, that's that fear management.
Yeah, and it may not be any cause for a weapon. It's just getting your space, talking it out.
Yeah.
But definitely be aware of where you are as far as
the ranges of fighting,
range.
Right? You got your weapons projectile range,
Right.
You got a striking range, and you
Right.
got a grappling range.
Because everybody, I mean, you have those individuals that have been around officers and know how to argue with them. They'll try to press the button.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if you have somebody straight out the academy, a young kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? You know what? You know, they don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah,
because there is no training.
Because their
like
ego's like, hey, I'm supposed to be in. Hey, I'm in charge here, right? And they get pushed.
There's no training like that.
Yeah, you got to have realistic training for, especially operators that are going to be like in the line of fire and the line of duty. They have to have like training that replicates the worst situations, right? Not just the ones that are going to be totally compliant, right? And you know, one of those things that comes in is even before you get to the fighting stuff is like learning these pre-contact cues. You know, like in Texas, a guy that's going to fight you might roll his sleeves up,
right?
You know, a guy in Iowa might take his shirt off, you know, or a guy from
start cracking
Oklahoma
his neck,
might crack his neck or take his hat off, you know, or do the look away. So
picking
all these
up on cues.
That's right, getting those cues down, and that's that. Same thing with wrestling. As you start building, the more training, the more realistic training you get, the better IQ you develop for anything that's going to happen that's going to be physical. When you know somebody's going to go, you have the edge.
And there's always anxiety.
Yeah.
And there's good anxiety, there's bad. But when you let it control, freeze you up, then that becomes a problem.
Yeah, that's that fight or flight, right?
It is, man. And I think, you know, we got to get more as law enforcement, they got to get more zoned in with that particular training.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big part. That's a big part of the SPEAR program, Tony Blauer's system.
I love the SPEAR.
Yeah, that's a big part of. I went through a couple of his programs, and it was great for just learning that side of it. You know, the mental part of it, how fear works. You know, the startle flinch theory, and all those things. So, man, I could go on this topic forever with you.
Yeah,
Dwight.
I love it, man.
But I want to cover a couple quick things before we get out of here. I know you got to get heading back home. Hall of Famer in 2021. What an awesome thing for you and your family.
Appreciate
well deserved.
Yes.
And I know, you know, getting another plaque on the wall is just like another thing to go. But like, you know, just hearing your story today and hearing all the greats you've been around, and just, you know, it doesn't even, a little plaque on the wall doesn't even suit that, you know, with the memories and the experiences and the experiences you've given to other people, like fans like me that have got to see you over time. That's a blessing. So
thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be here, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, privilege to be here.
And I want to cover one last thing here. You know, do you have a faith walk in your life, or?
You know, I grew up as a Christian, man. You know, we would always go to church every Sunday, of course. It's always ingrained in me. You know, do I go to church every day? No. I'm pretty much one of those guys, especially when I was law enforcement. It was hard to go on Sunday because I was always working.
Yeah, for sure.
But I try to take time out and just reflect. I guess instead of attending a service, I reflect.
Yeah. I
pray. I got a story about my grandmother on my dad's side. She used to pray in a closet.
That's where, matter of fact, that's where the Bible tells you to go pray. Go into your closet.
And she was, yes, strictly by that Bible, man. And she would take time to pray. Anytime we go over to her house, her cousins would be standing at the closet door. It was great. Oh, she's praying, man. You know, give her time. So even if you're not able to attend service, take time out to give thanks. And you know, and you may not be Christian. You could be another source of faith.
You have another source of faith
of somewhat. Take time for that, because you know, I think it is important. You know, there's other people who, you know, think differently about it, and that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
But whatever helps you get you out that dark place in your life, you know, positively, do it. You know, some people like to walk through the woods, you know, get that wholesome approach.
Yeah.
Others like to pray in the closet. Other people like to attend church. Or just being around people.
Yeah.
The energy, because they like the energy.
Yeah.
I don't really push it on anybody because everybody's different.
Everybody's different.
So, whatever works for you and helps you get through life.
Yeah. Getting through life, developing, creating good relationships.
Yes, sir.
Creating a network of people that are positive for you.
Yes, sir.
I'm all about that, brother.
Yes, sir.
Dwight Hinson, it's been an honor having you on here. I think the next time I see you is going to probably be at the Ed Winger tournament.
Hey, there we go.
So I'll see you there. I'll be listening for you yelling.
And also, I got a gift for you as well.
You got a gift for me?
I got a
Let's
gift
go.
for you, brother. Let me, hold on. I'm gonna give you, this is our team shirt here. It's one of the polos.
Nice.
Rudis or whatever, but CIWC Team Intensity. This is a large. Looks bigger than
that's me right there.
Yeah, that's you, brother.
I'll grow into that. I'm going to put some weight on this winter.
Yeah,
I've been sweating too much, man. I keep my gym at like 900 degrees.
Hey, that's
it's boiling in there.
That's what we do, man.
I appreciate the gift here. I'd actually like to come out and come train with you guys and roll around and get some rolls with everybody.
Anytime, man. We share. So our facility is on a private property. It's just off of Highway 69, 6070, Highway 69, between Gilbert and Ames. A family by the name of Dan and Chris Schmidt, if you're listening. They had 4 boys that wrestled. Of course, the boys are older now, but before Gilbert High School is where their family went to school. Before they even had a gym. This family owns a company, like a construction company or something like that. They built a machine shed. They dedicated it to the boys to train because their high school didn't have a facility.
Wow.
Yeah. Of course, like any old school, small town, you had the lunchroom, which was also a multi-purpose
roll
room.
the mats out.
Yeah, and they had to roll them out all the time.
Yeah.
So with these special people, Dan and Chris Schmidt, they made it possible to have a venue where we can train. And that's where we train our kids. It's called the Barn. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to come down to the barn and give you a visit.
Anytime, man.
Let's go.
We share it with a kendo group as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have the traditional garment. They practice with the wooden swords and also have actual
katanas. Yeah.
And it's great because anybody who knows me, who has been around me, those guys have been around us for the longest because they had practice after our practice.
Yeah.
And they'll ask all the time, "Hey, what are those guys wearing?" I'm like, "Well, this is traditional garment. This is what they practice.
Yeah.
This is their skill set, and this is what it's called."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wow." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Talk to them." I said, "There's a lot of connection and parallel between the two."
Yeah. All combat martial arts
Yep.
have similarities and things that they can gain from each other.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to come down. You show me a little bit of that that Russian arm tie, and I'll show you some jiu-jitsu.
Hey, we can collaborate.
Let's go. Thanks for coming on, Dwight.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.